As you know, big day for the investment summit starting today, officially opening, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But all of this investment talk in South Africa is taking place behind South Africa's national debt that is likely to exceed 70% of the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, in the next 3 years. This dire warning came from Finance Minister Tito Mboweni when he delivered the medium-term budget speech last week. He outlined some of the changes that need to take place, including doing away with some of the perks enjoyed by government officials. However, both economists and ratings agencies say more drastic reforms are needed to be implemented in order to turn the economy around. In studio now, we're joined by economist Miyelani Mkhabela, as well as Clyde Mallinson, who is a geologist and energy expert. Good to have both of you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So let's get to the realities of what some economists are saying and commented. And I want to see if you're very much so on their page or not. So some are saying after the Finance Minister's medium-term budget that government was tinkering around the edges, and rather what is needed is a more detailed budget constraint. What do real reforms look like? Do you agree with this? Is it tinkering, or do we need real reforms?
So like the three rating agencies, which is Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, they have four aspects that they attend to. One, it's economic strength, and then which looks on the economy to be growing in a very good economic growth. It can be 3 to 5%, because that is the economic growth, or sorry, that is the GDP growth that South Africa is expected to grow about. So it's only when we grow about with 5%, or when we grow with 4 to 5%, we are able to create jobs in South Africa, and that will need a commitment in manufacturing that will really boost that like that GDP like much. So we speak about the production possibility curve. So they need to come up with resources and human capital that will be manufactured, or that will be added in our national production possibility curve, so that the production possibility curve can shift to the like outward, or to the right, and that will make sure that there is economic growth, or that is a portrayal of economic growth, and it will create jobs. That is one. And then the second aspect is institutional strength. So our institutions has been weak, and we have seen that over the past 7 to 8 years. So if institutions are weak, it makes investors not comfortable in putting their money in such a country, because the pipe is carded. When you put money, it will link, like what has been happening in the past 7 to 10 years. We have been experiencing a budget, like a $1 trillion budget, but that budget was not really impacting the areas and the municipalities that it was supposed to be directed to. And then the third element, which is fiscal strength. So the fiscal strength speaks directly from National Treasury, where National Treasury is expected to come up with budget, but at the same time, that budget has to attend to the priorities as budgeted from national planning to budgetary. So such must work together, and with no corruption. So if institutional strength is moderate or low, it will mean as well fiscal strength is likely to be moderate and low, because the pipe on the other side of institution is weaker. So when you put money on the dam that is leaking, money won't sit there, or there will be no resources that will sit. It will link. And the last one, which is the fourth element, is susceptibility in events of risk, which speaks to political stability and other aspects. That speaks to the voices of the ANC. So from the ANC top 6, the premiers in different provinces, causes political stability and policy uncertainty. I think the simple example that we can do is the Sanral issue. When Gauteng and Transport Ministry were talking about Sanral, on the 5th on the 5th of May last year, Sanral was downgraded to negative instantly on the 5th of May because of Gauteng was indicating that the motorists are not expected to pay tolls. And that from investors' point of view, the investors need to collect their money. Yeah. And it's only that can happen when motorists are paying e-tolls. So there is a lot of economic education that is needed to South African politicians from now up until February next year. And that, like around that, I think we can do well if those 4 aspects are like attended to. Okay. And then the main one, it is the economic strength.
Let's leave it there for now because we're going to delve a bit deeper. But I want to get on to a couple of things that you mentioned in your answer, and particularly when it comes to state-owned entities. When we look at the situation, probably one of the biggest issues that South Africa faces is with Eskom and is with our power generation, and you'll find that international investors are very nervous about that. So let's talk to that. We've got them here. We're asking people to come in, believe in South Africa, invest in South Africa, and that yet we have one of the biggest issues coming out of energy. Now, from your side, what do you believe?
Okay, so being a geologist, I like to bring things down to earth.
Yeah.
We have the most fantastic opportunity in the state that we have at the moment with the state of Eskom. We happen to have a coal fleet that is being decommissioned. It's in fact decommissioning itself, so it's due to shut down in 10 years. So the first point I want to make is that we should aim to massively reduce our carbon emissions by 2030. And that aligns us where the whole world is aligning with at the moment with regard to climate change. The good news is that we can build a renewable fleet that can replace the coal fleet within a 10-year period, and it can produce electricity at a stabilized and a predictable future cost trajectory. So when it comes to Eskom, if one gets very, very detailed in this, some of the big problems with Eskom are staffing levels, and I would like to propose that those excess staffing levels don't simply get retrenched. They move across into a new entity that would be responsible for building up this new fleet, as it were, as a replacement fleet for Eskom. I would also like to propose that the fleet is primarily owned by the people of South Africa. So rather than the government owning this new Eskom entity, I would propose that the people of South Africa own the new entity, starting with the people who are most affected by potential job losses in Mpumalanga and in the coal mines. So I personally believe that Mpumalanga can become the hub of renewable energy in South Africa because all the transmission exists there. All of the infrastructure exists there. Mpumalanga actually gets very good sunshine in the winter, more in fact than the Northern Cape. So we have an opportunity, and we're just lucky that the rest of the world have paid the school fees, as they call it, on bringing down the cost of renewable energies at the very time that we need to replace our fleet.
More than ever. But
yes.
As you mentioned as well, it's the political will to want to do something like that. And do we have that will? Are we moving in that direction?
You know, one of the things, I recently wrote an article in the Mail and Guardian that spoke of the last 20 years of apartheid, where we mined gold to swap for oil. And we propped up our economy and didn't have the political will to change until we were economically bankrupt, basically. And I believe at the moment Eskom is economically bankrupt. And I believe the political will materialize when people realize how tight the economic situation is. That'll actually drive us to change. Because politicians look at what's happening around and make decisions based on populist votes. And I think nothing could be more popular than a transfer of power ownership to actual people. And I'm talking about transfer via opportunities when, if they do get retrenched, or via pension funds, to actually own the core assets of this new fleet.
Well, it would be incredible. I'm not sure if anything like that would happen. I mean, it would be...
It's going to happen.
Well, I hope so. I really do, because, I mean, that could be... You know, then people feel like they really do have a vested interest in this, which they do already. But, you know, having ownership in something is a big thing. But You know, we talk to overstaffing, and that's, you mentioned that, you know, it's one of those things that we heard Tito Mboweni speaking about. You mentioned in ESCOM, in fact, I think we're talking about, they were talking to 15,000 staff members that are too many on the books. That's how heavily staffed or overstaffed they are.
Yes.
You know, the real reforms, where does that come from, though? I know I asked you the same question, but if we have to talk now and realistically, what do we do?
The good news is that we have to build such a large renewable fleet in order to replace the existing coal fleet as it decommissions, that we will create many more jobs than those that are lost with the retirement of the existing fleet. And so there's a natural, obviously within ESCOM, there's a natural age progression of people reaching retirement age. And what we need to do is pick the young people from ESCOM to move into managing this new electricity fleet, as it were, of the future. And it's job accretive. You must remember that the coal fleet was built many years ago, most of it. So it's just on operation and maintenance now. It's not construction. A new replacement fleet requires ongoing construction jobs forever.
Yeah.
Because by the time we've replaced the ESCOM coal fleet, the wind and solar fleet will need replacing, because it has a limited lifespan. And so it's almost like Hogan painting the Sydney Bridge. He starts at one end. When he gets to the other end, he has to start again. So we have a construction industry in building a renewable fleet that lasts forever, essentially, as to kind of Medupi and Kasili, which are massive point-located construction things. And the big problem now is, what do you do when you stop building them and you suddenly retrench 12,000 people?
That's the other issue.
And so you want to rather disperse those potential job opportunities and make them sustainable. So it's looking to a sustainable energy future.
Miyelani, I mean, when we look at state-owned entities, do you agree with a scenario like what Clyde's talking to?
I don't agree with it from economic point of view, because economically you start with what you have. What you have economic competitive edge like around. So in terms of South Africa, there's a huge difference between Europe and South Africa. And, you know, I always indicate, whether we talk about economy or we talk about 4IR, we need to look at South Africa and what we have in South Africa. So South Africa has competitive strength with regard to coal. And South Africa has an advantage as well with regard to nuclear. So in terms of a pure energy mix that is not as well over costing to us as an economy, we need to look at coal first, and then we look at nuclear, and then we look at the expensive elements of renewable energy. Renewable energy is very expensive, so consulting around like such, since renewable energy project has been started, they even went to a cost-effective point that it was projected to, and it has been costly for for ESCOM as well. So buying from renewable energies, it has been like costly. What needs to be done is the mining companies that are supplying coal to ESCOM need to have a corporate citizenship and being mindful of the economy. So that will mean the cost of coal supplied to ESCOM need to be reflected and recosted again in a cost-effective manner, and that needs an engagement between government and mining companies, so that all the older contracts, probably we can go to a point where we cancel them and then we come up with new contracts in the coal, because we will have coal. We will have coal for the next 50 to 100 years in South Africa. Do you understand? So what needs to be done in all this climate change aspect, there is technologies that can as well be used to reduce climate like aspects. So you have seen Russia has done that with their nuclear, and they have technologies that they have implemented to make sure that the climate it's well managed. So precisely when you look at the same time outside like Eskom, you look at Transnet and PRASA. So those agencies, from production of trains at the same time to the whole cargo, cargo within Transnet and PRASA needs to be managed very well. So what needs to be done, and part of the things are being implemented, is to remove the people that are not suitable to be leading these state-owned enterprises, and we get the human capital that is capable in running the state-owned state-owned companies in a cost-effective way, and making sure that these companies are operating as profitable as possible.
And there I do agree with you on that point. We do need that human capital. But I worry about your sentiments on coal and nuclear, and that we must continue on that trajectory because that is cheaper than going the renewable route.
May I come in here? I like to do a nice thought experiment. It's not a thought experiment, it's a real experiment. If the coal fleet disappeared overnight, the existing coal fleet, and we replaced it with a brand new working coal fleet, not Medupi and Kasili, which are regarded as a non-working coal fleet, it would cost the country 100 billion rand per year more to finance, maintain and operate than if we replaced the coal fleet with a wind, solar and storage fleet. 100 billion rand per year more. We're talking a replacement fleet now. If we replaced the current coal fleet with a brand new nuclear fleet, so we took all the coal and we made it all nuclear, it would cost us 200 billion rand per year more to finance, maintain and operate than a renewable fleet. So the rate of change of the decrease in costs of renewable energies supported by storage technologies is such that people actually haven't cottoned onto it. It's the same as the rate of change of the price decrease of flat screen TVs. When I saw my first flat screen TV in Harrods in London, I thought one day maybe I'll own one of those. Now they give them away if the Springboks win the World Cup.
That's the truth. But if we go renewable, as a country, what would we save? I mean, how cost effective is renewable?
Well, I can tell you, we can produce electricity with a renewable fleet at under R1 a kilowatt hour, with a new coal fleet R1.36, with a new nuclear fleet R1.89. So we choose. Do you want to do 189, 136 or 94?
You don't agree?
Realistically, Elian, you see, when business people just talk, it's just talk. Feasibility studies, they don't relate to what he's saying. We can just check all feasibility studies. Feasibility studies differ with the modeling that he's relating to. We speak about crunching feasibility studies that are not really responding to the expectations or to the projections as anticipated. And we find that, people that are biased to this new way of doing things, which is renewable energy, it is that it works well at Europe, at China and other countries because they are producing these components of renewable energy. But with us, we are importing everything, and the cost of importing such is very expensive, and we are really not, the maintenance, the continuous maintenance is very high, whether it's wind or it's it's solar. I'm speaking about realities with regard to monitoring these renewable energy projects. And with regard to coal, we can be, because all in all, there's no way we are having an energy mix. I'm not speaking about one element. I'm speaking about energy, which is energy mix as a whole. So with regard to energy mix, we'll need to have coal, which will have 50 years to the next 100 years in South Africa. The new coal center pool at Waterberg, is there. There's a very huge pool of coal, of which we know that there is about 18% coal that is left at Mpumalanga side, but the Limpopo side, is booming as well with coal, and we're attending to that. It's something that he knows as well. It's just that he's a geologist. He knows the stones that the country has, and he knows that with stone we are a country that have a competitive edge.
Well, listen, it is always interesting to hear two completely different versions of the same story, and we'll leave it to the viewer to decide. But thank you, guys. It is unfortunately 8 o'clock, so we've got to leave the discussion there. But Very interesting perspectives. I'd love to hear your views on this. Coal, nuclear versus renewable. What do you think? You heard the arguments in favor of both. Economist Miyelani Mkhabela, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. And of course, Clyde Mallinson, who's a geologist and energy expert, giving us views on this. All right, it's 8 o'clock. Let's go over to Sakina.